Right. All right, folks. So let's get started. So first of all, welcome everybody to our virtual town hall with Q&A about Mayor Adams' dangerous ballot measures and why you should vote no in November. I'm Andrew Berman, Executive Director of Village Preservation, convening tonight's get together, but I want to thank and acknowledge our co-sponsors, which include the City Club of New York, the Midtown South Community Council, Save Chelsea, the Soho Alliance, the Committee for Environmentally Sound Development, Lower East Side Preservation Initiative, the Bowery Alliance of Neighbors, Broadway Residents Coalition, Council of Chelsea Block Associations, Congress for New Urbanism New York City chapter, and Friends of the Upper East Side. So we've got citywide and local groups covering a whole range of areas. Thank you all so much for helping to spread the word about this. And tonight's program is incredibly important because these ballot measures, which are going to be voted on starting October 25th, early voting, November 4th for the general election, really will forever transform the way in which decision-making takes place in New York City and the way in which land use and development takes place in New York City. And if we get it wrong, there could be disastrous consequences. So as we get started, I just want to make sure everybody's familiar with Village Preservation. If you don't know who we are, we were founded in 1980, and we work to document, celebrate, and preserve the special architectural and cultural heritage of Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo. We've secured landmark designation of more than 1,300 buildings in our neighborhoods and host more than 80 free public programs each year, of which this is one. If you want to learn more about us, just go to our website, villagepreservation.org. And if you'd like to support the work that we do, such as tonight's program, please consider making a donation. And Sam will drop a link to the donate in our chat, but you can also scan the image here if you want the QR code in order to bring you to our donate page. So let me just briefly run through the agenda for tonight. First, we're going to, of course, talk about the ballot measures. How did we get here and what do they do? Then we're going to talk about what we can do from here in terms of spreading the word and lobbying other groups and leaders to publicly oppose them. And then we're going to have a Q&A/discussion, which, by the way, we're intending to do by promoting speakers when they raise their hands at the when we get to that part of the program. So you don't need to put questions in the chat or Q&A or anything like that unless for some reason that doesn't end up working. So save your questions towards the end. And tonight's program will be recorded and shared. So you'll be able to, we'll share it with you. You can share it with others. You can go back and remind yourself of things, or if there's anything that you think you missed, or make sure other people who weren't here get to see this. Briefly, our goals for the evening. My hope is that everybody's going to leave here fully knowledgeable about what these ballot measures would actually do, particularly because we need to cut through the very deceptive language that they use. Secondly, I'm hoping that everybody here will be able to, as a result of tonight's meeting, speak to friends, family, neighbors, community organizations, and leaders about why these proposals are bad and why they should oppose them as well. So hopefully you'll be leaving here firmly opposed to the ballot measures, but also being able to go out and speak to others about it in terms of why and get more support for the campaign to defeat them. And we also want to give things you can do beyond just voting no to help stop these measures from passing. So first of all, as I think everybody's probably seen, we're really kind of hammering home, and I want to really emphasize these points to you to use, as well as to understand the impact of these ballot measures. If you care about democracy, affordability, or healthy neighborhoods, you should be voting no on ballot questions 2 to 4. And I'm going to explain why. But first, I'm going to talk about how we actually got here, because it's very important to kind of understand why we're facing this. So the mayor had no plans for a charter revision commission or proposed ballot changes at all until the city council came along with a charter revision commission where they were hoping to, in light of the many scandals that were enveloping the mayor and his administration, to implement greater oversight on the mayor and mayoral agencies. So they convened a charter revision commission. They have the power to do that. And they were intending to put measures on the ballot which would put checks in place as well as oversight in place on some activities of the mayor and his appointees. Well, the mayor didn't like this very much. And he knew that the one way in which he could prevent this from happening was for him to convene his own charter revision commission and propose ballot measures, because the way it works is if the mayor proposes ballot measures, they knock off or trump any proposed ballot measures by the city council. So the mayor very hastily convened this charter revision commission and appointed to it a series of campaign donors, lobbyists doing business with the city, and longtime allies to ensure that the commission did what he wanted it to do and made the recommendations that he wanted it to. And this was, of course, many months ago when I think the mayor was still holding out hope that he would, in fact, continue to be the next mayor. He's obviously not, since he's dropped out of the race, but his ballot measures are still on there. So the ballot measures are, of course, strongly opposed by the city council, and we'll talk about why, as well as several of our city's most prominent unions, which you can see here from this press release. It's named who some of them are. One of the points that I've tried to make when speaking to people about why they should oppose these, which as I think you probably know if you've read them or read things about them, they sound as wholesome and wonderful as mom and apple pie. If you don't take a critical look at them and just read the language that appears on the ballot, you'd think, why would anybody oppose these? But in fact, Speaker Adrian Adams, as well as many members of the city council, are opposed to it, as are several of our city's unions. And as I've said to many people, look, if I have to pick between trusting Adrian Adams and Eric Adams, I'll pick Adrian Adams every time. Again, the things to remember about the ballot measure changes are they really would undermine democracy, affordability, and healthy neighborhoods. Sam, I'm going to ask you to drop in the chat that link to villagepreservation.org/ballot questions, which is our webpage where we have more information about it. But I'm going to now explain why it would be so harmful in these three specific respects. And that's because basically what the ballot measures would do, and these are ballot measures 2 through 4, I should clarify, which also, it says over here, ballot questions 2 through 4, that's what tonight is focused on, will largely or entirely remove the legislative branch of New York City government from important decision-making, giving it all to the mayor or appointees he controls, particularly as it relates to land use and development. And we've all seen what an unchecked chief executive can do. And I think we've seen the great danger and the great harm when those checks and balances do not remain in place. So the processes and the oversight which these ballot changes would eliminate, which is the process by which they go through the city council, have typically been used to secure the following as part of approvals for these zoning changes and other land use actions. Typically, they've been used to add more affordable housing, to make the affordable housing more deeply affordable, meaning it's lower in cost and for people of lower incomes, to add in tenant protections as part of these measures that are approved by the city, to include anti-eviction or anti-displacement services, to include protections for small businesses and local jobs, because oftentimes these proposed zoning changes will have a big impact on local small businesses and jobs. They often include fair wage or labor practice requirements. One of the most common things that they include are increased infrastructure investments to handle the new development that these rezonings would allow, things like schools, parks, healthcare, sewers, etc. And they often also fine tune the rezoning for better results. They might say, look, you've included too much over here, but we think we could include more over here. We want to shift the boundaries a little bit in this way. These are all things that would be taken out of the process if these ballot questions are approved. Now, here is the actual language of the ballot questions, which, as I said before, if you've read them, they seem, wholesome and sweet. In true effect, they are anything but. And I'm going to go through each one of the three one by one and kind of break down what they would actually do. So let's start with question 2, which really has 2 separate parts. The first one, it refers to as fast tracking publicly financed affordable housing. And then the second part, which I refer to as part B, it says it will fast track applications delivering affordable housing, note the air quotes, in the community districts that produce the least affordable housing. So let's look at what this would actually do. So first of all, Part A doesn't define affordable in any way, which means that without a doubt, a lot of stuff that you and I think any average person would probably not consider affordable will end up qualifying for these fast track approvals. And by the way, by fast track, the impression that the mayor and proponents of these have tried to give is that it's all about making this move more quickly so we can get these good things to happen more quickly. They would, in fact, speed up the process by a couple of weeks, typically for projects that take years to build or for rezonings that play out over decades in terms of ultimately what they allow to be built out. So the change in terms of a couple of weeks is really negligible. The really substantive change is that they entirely remove the city council from the approval process and make it really just subject to mayor or mayoral appointee approval with sole discretion. And in terms of these quote unquote affordable housing developments, it's been portrayed that they would require public financing. In order to qualify for this, something as little as a tax exemption could qualify for this public financing section so that they get this expedited approval and a whole huge range of types of developments use tax exemptions or some small amount of public financing. And the only real requirement is that building be owned in part by a company which is formed for the development of housing projects for persons of low income, as it says, without defining low income. Now, let me just say this part A of question 2 is the least problematic and least troubling part of the entire 3 sets of ballot questions. But even it, as you can see here, has some very troublingly vague elements that the loopholes are big enough to, sort of drive a tank through. Let's go to Part B and keep in mind, so Part B comes along with, if question 2 is approved, you're getting Part B along with Part A. Part B is much more wide-reaching, much more disturbing in terms of what it would do. Part B makes any rezoning application that includes mandatory inclusionary housing no longer subject to city council review in 12 of 59 community boards. There will always, in perpetuity, be 12 of 59 community boards that are exempted from city council review. Now, these rezoning applications that get these exemptions from city council review can be neighborhood-wide in scope, so something like the recent Soho NoHo rezoning or the recent Midtown South rezoning or the Jamaica rezoning that just went through the city council. These are all the types of rezonings that would be covered by this change with this new process where basically only the mayor gets to decide whether they go through and what they look like. They can include non-housing uses, corporate offices, hotels, dorms, high-end shopping, etc. The proponents of this would like to have you believe this is only about affordable housing or only about housing and affordable housing. It's not. It will allow these neighborhood-wide rezonings with much, much, much bigger implications and other elements included in them. The housing that it allows can be up to 80% super luxury or more. Mandatory inclusionary housing says that a maximum of 80% of the housing can be market rate, which in most cases, certainly in neighborhoods like ours, means super luxury. But in fact, we've seen that developers have figured out loopholes where they can build 100% super luxury housing with no affordable included whatsoever, typically in smaller projects, but still it happens. So up to and even above 80% of the housing that these rezonings can allow can be super luxury. Now, the quote unquote required, and I put required in quotes because as I just described, it's not always required, affordable housing can actually be unaffordable to by far the majority of New Yorkers. The requirements for income levels can be well above the median income for New York City residents, which calls into question whether or not it really is accurate or appropriate to call this affordable housing. It is income restricted. It does have restrictions on the amount of rent, but the income restrictions are often much higher than the average New Yorker qualifies for, and the rents or prices are commensurate with those income levels. And most importantly, or as importantly, and perhaps the biggest piece of this, is it removes the city council's ability to negotiate for more or deeper affordability when these rezoning proposals come forward, for tenant protections, for anti-displacement measures, infrastructure investment, fair labor, and right sizing. So this is all still just question two. Now, as I mentioned before, this determination would apply to what the city refers to as the bottom 12 community boards for producing affordable housing over the last 5 years. Now, what that doesn't count is how much affordable housing the community board actually has, only what has been built in the last 5 years. So you could have a community board that has more affordable housing than any other community board in the city. If they haven't built it in the last 5 years, they get relegated to this system where the city council no longer has any say and the mayor has unilateral control to decide whether or not these rezonings go through. It also does not count rent-regulated housing as affordable, no matter how affordable it is. And lastly, and this is an important piece of this in terms of which community boards end up getting on here, it doesn't count how many rezonings the community board has had that have promised affordable housing but failed to deliver. And it then gives more unilateral control to the same entity, the mayor and the city planning commission, which he controls, that failed to deliver on affordable housing promises to do more of the same. So let me give you an example. And by the way, nobody is going to know if this passes until sometime in 2026 what those 12 community boards can be. There's a very good chance community board 7 on the Upper West Side, 8 on the Upper East Side will be on there. It looks like there's community boards in the other 4 boroughs that are likely to be on there. Community Board 2, which includes Greenwich Village, Soho, NoHo, etc., seems like it might be near that bottom 12 list. So let's use Community Board 2 as an example. Community Board 2 has actually had 3 rezonings in the past decade or so that were initiated by or supported by the city, the mayor, and the Department of City Planning that promised to deliver affordable housing to this neighborhood. Soho NoHo rezoning 4 years later has produced 0 units of affordable housing. The St. John's Terminal rezoning was promised 500 units of affordable housing. They built into the rezoning a sort of escape clause for the developer who, if they didn't want to build housing but wanted to instead build corporate offices, could do so. They utilized that, and now only 175 affordable housing units are supposed to be delivered from that. And the Hudson Square rezoning has delivered maybe about half of the housing that was promised or predicted when this was pushed forward by the city. So you can say yes to all of the rezoning proposals that the city gives you. And if they don't deliver on the promised affordable housing, you still get screwed. And basically your ability through your city council member to have a say in any future rezonings is eliminated. So that was question two. Let's move to question three, which will appear on your ballot saying it will simplify review of modest amounts of additional housing and minor infrastructure projects, significantly reducing review time. It will maintain community board review with final decision by the City Planning Commission. City Planning Commission, 7 of the 13 members are appointed by the mayor. It is controlled by the mayor. It ultimately does what the mayor wants. So let's talk about what question three actually means. It would allow a 30% increase for up to 30% for any kind of residential development. It doesn't have any affordable housing requirements attached to it whatsoever. And by the way, the city is selling this as modest housing, modest amounts of additional housing. Now, note that this comes on top of the up to 40% or more increase that was just added to the allowable size of development throughout the city as a result of City of Yes. Now, because this was only approved, I think just a few months ago, we've seen almost nothing has been built under City of Yes yet. So we haven't yet seen that 40%-ish bump. It varies from location to location that we're going to get from City of Yes. But now on top of that, on top of the 40 that's already been baked in, there can be an additional 30, which again, the mayor just has the power, more or less with a wave of his hand, to approve. And it doesn't even require, in addition to not having any affordable housing requirements, it doesn't even require that there be more housing units as a result of these increases. It could be a 30% increase in the size of each in some cases, a multi-floor super luxury condo. So let me just give you some sort of real world examples here. So at the lower left, you can see 5 West 13th Street, which is a development that we're very, very concerned about. It's supposed to be 538 feet tall. And it's supposed to go in at 5 West 13th Street in Greenwich Village. The developer claims that it is allowable under the new City of Yes rules. It would have all of 36 super luxury condos stretched out over these 538 feet. If this goes through, they could apply for and get an increase of 30%, which would make it 700 feet tall. It could still be the same 36 super luxury condos. Each one of them could just be 30% bigger than is currently planned. Another particularly egregious example of what could happen. This is 77 West 66th Street here. And by the way, this illustration is by George M. Janes Associates, which I know has been working on this. That is a 1,200 foot tall building that is in the process of moving ahead to be developed on West 66th Street on the Upper West Side. With a 30% bump, that then becomes a 1,560 foot tall building. And just to note, the roof height of One World Trade Center is 1,368 feet. So I don't know if I would say that modest increases is really an accurate way of describing what ballot question number 3 would allow. Then we go to ballot question number 4, and this is they refer to as establishing an affordable housing appeals board with council, borough-wide, and citywide representation. Establish an affordable housing appeals board with the council speaker, local borough president, and mayor to review council actions that reject or change applications creating affordable housing. Basically, what this means is for any rezoning, it doesn't matter how big it is, it doesn't matter how many luxury condos it would produce, how much office space it would create, as long as it has some sort of MIH, quote unquote, affordable housing component to it, which, as we said, can often be unaffordable to the majority of New Yorkers. If the council rejects it, if the mayor can get the borough president to go along with him, they can override the council and just approve it as is. And they can also they can avoid any changes that the city council is seeking to make to the rezoning. So let's talk about what the real world implications of that is. So again, it applies to any rezoning that includes MIH. could be, discussed this before, just like before, it can be neighborhood wide, include all of these non-housing uses. The housing, again, can be up to 80% super luxury. The required affordable housing can be unaffordable to by far the majority of New Yorkers. And the biggest, broadest implication is it really removes the city council's ability to negotiate for more or deeper affordability, tenant protections, anti-displacement measures, infrastructure investment, fair labor, and right sizing. Basically, now it is very, very common by far most of the time when a rezoning comes to the council, some element of this is fought for by the city council. If the mayor no longer needs the city council's approval, he doesn't have to give any of these things as part of the process of a rezoning. And again, I'm going to provide some real world examples. Here is this proposed 600-foot tall tower on city-owned land at what's called Gansevoort Square. The city is calling it Gansevoort Square, that the city under Mayor Adams is seeking to build. It would have to go through, under current rules, the ULURP or rezoning process. And it's proposed to be, the mayor says 50 to 75% luxury housing, 25 to 50% quote unquote affordable housing. But so only 25% is guaranteed, and the 25% can actually take up less than 25% of the building because the luxury apartments can be bigger than the quote unquote affordable ones. The local council member here, Eric Botcher, has pushed back on this somewhat. It hasn't yet officially gone through the process, but he said, hey, I think this is too tall. And I think given that this is city-owned land, we should not be having so much luxury housing here. We are pushing for zero luxury housing and only for affordable housing on this site. If ballot question number 4 passes, the local council member and the city council would have no ability to make any changes to this plan whatsoever. If the mayor says a 600-foot tall tower of mostly super luxury condos, filling up what ultimately amounts to more than 75% of the building, there is no check on the mayor whatsoever if they can get, in this case, the borough president to agree with them on it. And let me just give you a couple of other real world examples and implications. So the city council just recently voted to approve this very, very large rezoning in Jamaica, Queens. As part of the process, they made part of the deal, this, as you can see here, reported $100 million to expand healthcare because apparently there is, a huge number of healthcare disparities in this neighborhood and great unmet needs. And as you can see over here on the upper right, it will also provide $413 million in new community investments for Jamaica, including water and sewer infrastructure, parks and open space, transportation and public realm, public health, public safety resources, and educational institutions, only because the city council has a role in approving this and in saying, look, we're talking about adding thousands and thousands of new homes here. We need infrastructure, we need a healthy neighborhood to support that. So I also just want to point out, because this is just the most recent and a perfect example, this rezoning would also include creating over 2 million square feet of commercial space. So these rezonings are not just about housing. In fact, in the Soho NoHo rezoning, the one building that has been built so far under the rezoning is a corporate office tower on Bowery and 4th Street. So while the proponents of these ballot measure changes would like to make you think it's about housing, it's really not so much about housing. And on the lower right, this really just sort of points out 12,000 new homes and the largest mandatory inclusionary housing zone in the entire city. These are things of enormous implications, enormously broad, and these are the things that city council review would be eliminated for under these ballot questions. I want to point out, because one of the arguments that people use to say that this is necessary is that it's needed to counteract the ability of any city council member to veto any affordable housing development. But in fact, if you've been following the city council, a recent rezoning in the Bronx shows the exact opposite dynamic. In the southeastern Bronx, in the one district that's represented by a Republican member of the city council, she opposed a rezoning there that was intended to provide affordable housing for people who were recently released from Rikers Island who are in extreme medical need. So it's supportive housing for these former Rikers Island inmates. She opposed it. The city council overrode her, or actually overrode is not even the right word. It doesn't require it to be overridden. The majority of the council voted for it, even though the local council member was against it. And now it's actually the mayor who is trying to torpedo this project. So the narrative that the proponents of this bill like to give is that the mayor is always the one who's supportive of affordable housing and the city council is not. This shows actually the exact opposite. And if ballot question number 4 were approved, in this case, the mayor would have the power to have killed this, as opposed to the city council approving it. So here's a question that I often hear from people, and I've gone to speak to groups all across Lower Manhattan and the city about this. Well, but some people say the way that I'm thinking about this is, what if we have the right mayor? Don't we want that person to have as much power as possible? And I hear from some people who are very enthusiastic about or excited about who they anticipate is going to be the next mayor of New York City. As you can see, these are the 3 candidates. It's not over until it's over. I've been surprised by election results before. I've also been surprised by people when they've come into office, how they've governed as compared to when they were campaigning. But all of that aside, no matter who the next mayor is going to be and no matter how they govern, this is going to apply to every single mayor moving forward. So you can't think about this in terms of who you think the next mayor will be and what kind of mayor you think they're going to be, whether you like them or not. This is going to apply to every one of our future mayors. And I just want to point out, these were our last 4 mayors. So, don't, I don't think you can assume or predict what the next mayor of New York City, or future mayors, I should say, of New York City are going to be like, what they're going to govern like, what they're going to look like. The most important thing is to have a system that works and that keeps those checks and balances that our system of government was intended to have, where the legislative branch, along with the executive, had a say and a role in these. And let me just say, the current system is tilted very, very, very far in the direction of the mayor. The mayor has much, much, much more powerful than has much more power than the city council in these decisions. But the city council has at least some, and they use that leverage in the ways that I've just described. These ballot measures would basically remove that leverage altogether from the process, or almost entirely. The last thing that I just sort of want to point out is we've seen a lot of mayors with quite a few scandals, almost always connected to real estate. And that's even with our current system, where there is some level of oversight and checks and balances, where the mayor can't always, or in a lot of cases, can't just unilaterally say, I'm going to approve this, I'm going to approve this, I'm going to give away this, I'm going to give away that. If we make it so that the mayor has that many more ways, and these are a significant number of ways in which they get to decide, it is only going to lead to more corruption, more abuse, and a less honest system. And I really, really think that that would be a terrible, terrible mistake if we allowed that to happen. So another question I get from folks a lot is, well, look, I think it sounds like it could be really good, but worst comes to worst, if it doesn't, can it be reversed if it seems like it's not working, or if we no longer have a mayor that we think we want to invest all of this additional authority to? Well, the reality is no. Any charter revisions will be virtually impossible to reverse or amend without the approval of the mayor. And that's because, as I described at the beginning, the mayor always has the power to trump any other charter revision commission being able to put questions on the ballot. So much like Mayor Adams did this year, any future mayor, if the city council is trying to put something on the ballot that he or she doesn't like, it's very easy. They just impanel their own charter revision commission, and whatever ballot proposals they put forward, they will trump and knock off any other ballot measures. There is, by law, a very, very, very difficult way in which the public can put measures on the ballot. It's virtually never been used because, in fact, it is incredibly difficult. So you really want to think about this as a permanent change to our system of governance. That's why it's a charter revision change. The charter is the New York City Constitution. We are changing the Constitution and saying this is the way in perpetuity we want business done in our city. So from here, I'm going to switch to what can you do? Hopefully I've convinced you that these ballot measures are bad. And then I want to talk with you about what resources exist for you to use. And Sam, I'll just ask you to drop again in the chat the link, and this is to the page, to villagepreservation.org/ballot questions. This is our web page about the three questions that are going to be on the ballot. And it's got really, really great tools for you to be able to use. First of all, we've got this here, which you can share in Instagram, on Facebook, on X. We've also got it as a slide presentation. It's been very, very effective in terms of conveying to people what the impact of the ballot changes are and what they would do. You can see it explains if Eric Adams is no longer running for mayor, but his proposed changes to the charter are still on the ballot. They'll take decision-making power away from you and the city's legislative branch, giving it all to the mayor. And the result will be less affordability, fewer tenant protections, fewer resources for neighborhoods, and less democracy. We've got some other things for you. Here is a FAQ, frequently asked questions. It's a great way, both if you need information, but also to share with people. It addresses what I think are some of the commonly held misconceptions based on the misinformation and misleading language in the ballot measures that's out there about what they would do, sort of responding to a lot of these about, is the primary impact just that it's making the approval process faster for certain projects? Would this just apply to specific affordable housing projects? Of course, no. Wouldn't these changes only apply to housing of some sort? No. Aren't these changes only for relatively small or discrete projects? No, and it explains why. And it kind of goes through the whole list of what are the sort of misconceptions that exist about this. So going back to the page here, we also have a sort of more detailed explanation of the ballot questions. The language of the ballot questions as they will appear, the city council's webpage that they have created to try to cut through some of the misinformation. And then the last thing along these lines that I'm going to share with you is, starting tonight, we are launching this, which is an automated letter that you can send to every city elected official in New York City, and every candidate for mayor, basically telling them that they should oppose these devastating and deceptive ballot questions, and that you want them to publicly come out against it. All you have to do is fill it out, and it automatically goes to about 75 different people. And the reason why this is important is because one of the most important things that we can do is we can try to get influencers of some form or another, and that includes elected officials, to publicly come out against it. Now, some of them already have. Some have come out in favor of them, which is extremely disappointing. But we want to encourage and push as many elected officials as possible to be very public and vocal. You know, a lot of people do look to elected officials, the ones that they like or trust, for guidance on things like ballot measures. The other thing that I want to, along these lines, really encourage each of you to do is to not only vote against it, but to reach out to your networks. You know, I showed you how you can share this web page, you can share this in social media. Please do, you know, a letter by email to everybody you have in your list, telling them that you are opposing these ballot measures and why. I would also really, really strongly urge you to reach out to any block association, neighborhood organization, civic group, tenants association, any that you are a member of or connected to, and say, hey, I'm really worried about this. I think this is going to do harm to our block, our neighborhood, our city, whatever it is that this group represents. And I really want to urge our group to oppose it and to recommend a no vote on it. You can certainly feel free to connect them to me and our organization if they want more information, but you should have lots of information to go on here and to share with them. The more people hear from voices that they trust, their their neighborhood group, their civic group, their block association, a Democratic club, a Republican club, any other kind of political organization, the more they hear from voices that they trust saying vote no on ballot measures 2 through 4, the more likely they are to vote against it. So you really want to get as many of these groups to do that as possible, in addition to your own person-to-person outreach to anybody you know, urging them uh, to to vote no. The last thing I'll just sort of say as a pitch, if you want to support our efforts on this, we are putting a lot of effort into trying to educate the public about this. You can certainly make a donation to Village Preservation to support this or any other effort. And Sam, I'll ask you to drop in the chat again the link to our donate page if you want to do that. I just want to make sure everybody is aware there is a multi-million-dollar PAC that's been set up to make sure that these ballot measures are passed. So the other side has a lot of money and they're working really, really, really hard. And they've got the wind at their backs because, you know, this sounds like a great thing that everybody should be for. But the reality is, I think that if most people understood what it would actually do and what its real impacts would be, it would overwhelmingly be voted down. And that's what our work is. And we've got our work cut out for us, which is to make sure people know the real truth about what these ballot measures would do, and how much harm they would bring to our city in terms of democracy, affordability, and healthy neighborhoods. So I am going to leave it there. And I am going to hopefully now, if we can make this work, ask folks who want to speak to raise your hand, and we will try to get to as many people as possible. If this works the way that it's supposed to, when we do, we will promote you to speaker. Which if you haven't experienced that before, basically what's going to happen is something's going to pop up on your screen saying you're being asked to be promoted to a panelist. You will then appear in the Zoom so that everybody can see you and hear you. I'm going to ask everybody to keep whatever your question is brief because we want to get to everybody. So if you can keep it in a form of a question, if it's a comment, keep it really, really brief. We are going to try to get through everything and everyone. So let me see if I can do this. I saw that a bunch of hands were raised, but they're not appearing here. Huh. Let me see if I can Okay. All right. Sam, can you promote Phyllis Rosenblatt?
Hi.
Phyllis,
Yes.
hi.
My I
Go ahead
I
with your
actually
question.
yes. My question is about ballot 5. How do they secure the safety and security for a digital map of the city?
Okay, so Phyllis is, thank you very much for that question, Phyllis. Sam, you can um, demote her. The ballot question number 5, we have not weighed in on it. If you're not familiar with it, it's a much more narrowly focused ballot question about the digital map of the city of New York. I'm not going to really opine on it. I've heard some people who've raised some concerns about it. I've heard other people who've said it's fine. It came out of the same Charter Revision Commission that all of these other questions from the mayor did. So I'll leave it there. But you're basically gonna have to go to other sources if you want a little more insights on question number 5 and what the pros or the cons are. So, all right, let's see. Let's go to our next questioner. I see Judith Jacobson. If you could promote her, Sam.
Hi.
Hi.
Um, I have been under the impression, and now I seem to be wrong, that the third person on this appeals board was from the City Planning Commission, but it's from the Speaker of the
Right.
Council. So
Correct.
why can't the Speaker of the Council and the Borough President unite against the mayor?
So great question, Judith. And Sam, you can bring her back. Basically, the way this works is so currently the rezoning goes to the mayor or goes to his city planning commission. If it's approved by the city planning commission, which if the mayor wants it to be approved, it will be because the city planning commission is a majority of mayoral appointees. It then goes to the city council, and the city council can approve it, reject it. They approve about 95% of the applications that they get, or they can make changes to it or negotiate changes to it. Basically, what this does is it says if the city council says, and so currently, right now, the city council's approval is required. So if the mayor and his city planning commission say, we want this, and we want it exactly as we proposed it, and the city council either says, no, we think this is a bad idea, or yes, we would approve it, but it needs some improvements. It needs more affordability. It needs more infrastructure. It needs to, sort of fix this as a part of the process. And the mayor says, well, you know what? City council, I don't care what you say. I don't want to do that. I want this to go ahead exactly as I proposed it. Then he gets to basically override the city council by just getting the borough president to agree with him. So this is a way for the mayor to override the city council on any rezoning application that has any housing element to it whatsoever. And again, that's question 4. In question 2, he doesn't even need the borough president. He gets to do it unilaterally for those 12, any application that's within those 12 community boards that the city says are the lowest producing of new affordable housing, which again doesn't count existing affordable housing, doesn't count rent regulated housing, doesn't count how many rezonings you've already had that have promised affordable housing but failed to deliver on them. So, okay, let's see who is next on here. Um, huh. I know other people have raised their hands, but for whatever reason, it's not appearing. Sam, are you seeing other people whose hands
I
are raised?
think they're all done. There's a
You-
bunch in the Q&A though.
Okay. All right. Let me hold on. Oh, I see.
There's one more. Hold on.
Okay. Let's promote her. Anna?
Hello. Thank you for this presentation. I was just curious, what are arguments that are for saying yes to the ballot for ballot 2 through 4?
Well, I think your best bet is to look at what the proponents say, but their arguments for it basically are that this will help with affordability, and that this will speed the process and give us things that we want and that are currently being denied us or slowed down by the existing processes. As I've hopefully kind of showed and explained, that is very much not the case. In fact, the processes that would be eliminated typically make these better. And much of what these proposed changes would allow to go through not just a swifter process, but a process that is unilaterally controlled by the mayor, as opposed to the city council having any say, oftentimes have what it would allow oftentimes won't have any affordable component to it whatsoever, will be mostly unaffordable super luxury housing. And in many cases, parts of what it will allow will not be housing at all. It'll be corporate office buildings. It'll be luxury retail, hotels, dormitories for private universities, all of those sorts of things. So I'm not going to make the other side's argument for them, but basically their argument is this is going to get rid of the impediments to all of the good things that we want, like affordable housing. But if that was really the case, they wouldn't be attaching all of this other crap basically to it, and they wouldn't be cutting out of the process an entity which is both more responsive and more connected to the public, and which, if anything, tends to fight for more affordability, as well as more things that need to come along with these kinds of developments to make sure that the neighborhoods that are hosting them have the infrastructure and resources to make them the healthy places to live that we want them to be. So, okay, thank you very much for that question. So I see Michelle Campo has her hand raised. Michelle, are you there?
I'm here. Took me a minute to unmute.
Okay, go ahead with your question, Michelle.
I understand you've been great at laying out all the pros and cons of the other amendments, but nobody speaks about amendment number 1. What about amendment number 1?
So amendment number 1, ballot question number 1. Thank you, Michelle and Sam. You can bring her back. So ballot question number 1 is the only question that's going to appear on the ballot that doesn't come out of Mayor Adams's Charter Revision Commission. It's actually a statewide question, and it's going to be voted on throughout New York State, and it has to do with something in the Adirondacks. Again, it's not an issue that we are opining on. What I can tell you is, from what I've heard, it sounds as though everybody is for this. Environmentalists, non-environmentalists, business community, the local community up there. I have not heard anything from anybody saying this is why you should vote against it. We're not issuing a recommendation on it because it's a little outside of our bailiwick, and I don't claim to be the expert on it, but it is the one that is different than all of the other ones. It has an entirely different source and different implications. Okay, great. So going next, I see Terry Wisdom. Terry.
Yes. Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Terry Wisdom, and I do something called Harlem Network News. So I'm very, very interested in people being informed. And you just said the last thing about the number 1 ballot. I think we need to research that as well, because often what's on the back of the ballot, people don't know, don't understand. My concern, and this is representing our community. We just had a situation where the 145 project got ratified by the city council, and our council person went for it. But one of the issues and the problems that you spoke about is the AMI, or the medium income, which doesn't reflect anybody that lives there. So when they're saying affordable housing, and this is the crux of it, like, how can we get to that? How can we, do a charter, a legislature, or something to make, everybody says, well, that's how the AMI is, but this is ridiculous. This is what is hurting us, is killing us. And somehow, if we could get some of our representatives on, which I intend to with Harlem Network News, to talk about these ballot issues and, how they see it or what they think about it. I think that would be critical because at this point, city council, borough presidents, everyone, the people are not being heard in
Sure.
terms of these things that are happening. So it's a very critical thing, whether it's city council, the mayor, the borough president, the people are not being heard.
Thank you very much, Terry. Terry raises some really good points, which is that part of the reason why, first of all, these ballot questions are so inaccurate in terms of the way they claim that they're going to help provide affordable housing is because of this issue connected to something called AMI, or area median income. In terms of how that works and how to solve it, that's a whole other Zoom that would go for many, many, many hours. But basically, the way the system is set up, and it's something that the city could change. It's not outside of their power. What we call "quote unquote" affordable is actually stuff that in many cases is well above what is the actual median or median income for New York City households, but it gets categorized as affordable, and therefore it qualifies for all these things, such as what these ballot measures would breeze through. And in lower income communities, it's an even worse issue because there's the measurement of what's considered affordable is used citywide. So, something that might be unaffordable to the average New Yorker might be really, really unaffordable to the average resident of a lower income New York City neighborhood. So the problem is even worse in communities where the income levels are below average. We're not going to solve that here. All I can tell you is these ballot measures, are built upon that very, very, very problematic premise of how we do things. So, all right, let's. Who is next up in terms of questions? I see Nick.
Hi, I'd like to I can speak a little bit about the state prop if you'd like.
I'm sorry, about what?
About proposition number one, the state thing. I can explain it very slightly. I am not a lawyer. I'm certainly not a conservation lawyer, but I've had it explained to me. If you want to give me 2 minutes, I can attempt to do that.
Well, actually, Nick, if you can, why don't you drop some information in the chat so that if people want to find out about it, they can. We're really focused on ballot measures 2 through 4 here. But if people are interested in finding out more about that, that would be the best way to do that. Share that, and then people can take a look if they want. Thank you. Sam, who do we got up next? Martha. Martha, are you there? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Go ahead.
You can learn about ballot question number 5 and the Landmark West website, since they oppose it.
Mhm.
And the point on the Village Independent, the point on number 6 is if local elections are moved to presidential years, they'll be shadowed by national elections.
Great. Thank you, Martha. Martha's referring to ballot question numbers 5 and 6, which again, we're not opining on. 5 is this thing that has to do with the maps. As she pointed out, Landmark West, if that's a group that you're familiar with and whose opinion you value, they do have a position on this. Ballot measure 6 is about moving city elections from the odd numbered years that they currently are held in to the presidential years. again, this is an important one. It's not one that we're weighing in on, so I don't have a position to share about that. I can tell you that the basic arguments for it are that you have higher turnout in presidential election years. So isn't it better to have city races in years with higher turnout? More people will participate. The argument that I've heard against it is that, among other things, most elections on the city level are actually decided at the primary level, not the general election level. And because the primary races will not be the same time as the presidential primary races, it won't increase turnout. But what it will do is sort of drown out the the local city races, so they'll be less able to get attention for candidates to raise money, et cetera. Those are the arguments I've heard one way or the other. We're not opining on that. There are several good sources out there that you can go to if you want to find out more about the arguments on ballot measure 6. So, Sam, who's next up? Susan.
Hi, Andrew. Quick question. Have city council members who will be most negatively affected by these ballot measures, have they galvanized their communities to vote no on 2 through 4? And if not, what can we do?
Well, a great question, Susan, and that's exactly why we want you and everybody else to go to the link that we showed and that we put in the chat. And Sam, I'll ask you to put it in the chat again here, villagepreservation.org/ballot questions. On there, we have that automated letter that you can send to every member of the city council, every city elected official, everybody who's running for mayor, urging them to come out against the proposal publicly and to, publicize their opposition and to urge people to vote against it. There are some members of the city council that have been vocal and public about it. One of them that I know just in terms of our area is Chris Marte. He's been very, very outspoken about it. Others have not been. And there's a few, I believe, that are supporting it. Certainly, there are some elected officials who are supporting it. So I think it behooves all of us to try to get as many of our elected officials as possible to come out publicly against this and quickly. And as I said, the other things that you can do to help ensure that we win on this is for you to reach out to your networks, for you to reach out to your local organizations and urge them to come out against this and to recommend a no vote. Sam, let's bring up the next speaker, Karen.
Hi, Andrew. This is Karen from the Bronx.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. This reminds me, I don't know why, of gentrification, like a very cynical way of getting what some people would like all of us out of the town so they could have it for themselves. And aren't there other ways for them to make changes like this that involves the public? Like the hearings that they had for the charter revision were really kind of bogus. You couldn't hear them. If people were speaking and asking questions, you couldn't hear that. It was just a weird way of doing stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Yes, well, that was, I think, one of the many reasons why this is a flawed set of proposals is, it was a really, really quick slipshod kind of process. Because again, it was put together at the last minute, basically to block the city council from being able to do their charter revision amendments that would have put checks on the mayor's power. And in fact, I do believe that overall, on balance, what this would in fact do is it would accelerate gentrification in most places, because in fact, the types of developments that it would allow and the types of rezonings that it would allow are overwhelmingly for unaffordable housing. And in many cases, the housing that's called affordable is unaffordable. Sometimes some of it is truly affordable, but a lot of it is not. Too much of it is not. Removing the city council from the approval process is only going to make that worse, not better. So, and I'll just say this, nobody has been a more frequent and vocal critic of the city council and of individual city council members than I and this organization. all of that said, when it comes to these issues, they are generally more in the right direction than the mayor. So it would be, while they are imperfect and the process is imperfect, we are removing something from the process, a very important piece that makes it better, not worse. Sam, let's bring up our next speaker.
That was it.
That's it in terms of people who have their
Yep.
hand raised. All right, great. Let me just go into the Q&A then and look at, so one of the questions is, have you asked Mamdani to tell his followers to vote no? We have reached out to all of the mayoral candidates about these questions. And as I said, if you go to villagepreservation.org/ballot questions, you can with just a couple of clicks, send a letter to about 75 elected officials, including Assemblymember Mamdani and the other mayoral candidates, urging them to come out against this publicly. So let's see. I see a suggestion for an 8.5 by 11 poster. We did have a flyer for tonight's hearing. We can look at coming up with a flyer for tonight's program. We can look at coming up with a flyer more generally about urging people to vote on the ballot questions. Do you know any groups who will be canvassing on this topic? Any tips for dealing with YIMBY? Look, I would say the most important thing is just to hammer home the basic points. This is bad for affordability, bad for democracy, bad for healthy neighborhoods. They're going to try to say, oh, these ballot measures are pro-affordable housing. Point out to them that they're eliminating from the process the body that tends to add more affordability and deeper affordability, along with all of the other things that make our city and our neighborhoods healthier, and that we don't need an unchecked executive here in New York. There's a reason why we have two branches of government, why we have an executive and a legislative, and removing the legislative branch from the process is not a good thing, and that making land use decisions unilaterally in the purview of the mayor is only going to lead to worse outcomes and more corruption. So those are some of the points that I would make. Who helped Adams write these changes? Well, it was his Charter Revision Commission, but as you saw from what we shared, that Charter Revision Commission was constituted of his campaign donors, his allies, people doing business before the city. So these are all people who are basically doing, for the most part, his bidding. No discussion about it done by 80-20 or even, okay, so this is the issue we spoke to before. Let's see. The city council review, is it only that are the other processes and steps that are being eliminated under Prop 2? So yes, for Proposition 2, the main change is that it eliminates the city council from the review process. I actually think that in one case, it even removes the city planning commission from the process and just brings it all over to the Board of Standards and Appeals, which unlike this, so the City Planning Commission, the majority of its members are appointed by the mayor. The Board of Standards and Appeals, 100% of its members are appointed by the mayor. So let's see, I'm just going to see if we have any other questions here that we have not hit in the Q&A. Someone else is asking for when the recording will be available. Hopefully by no later than tomorrow, if not long after that. Everybody who signed up for tonight's program will be sent a link to it. And it looks like that is it. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to urge you to go to our website, to villagepreservation.org /ballot questions. And I also, here you go. Please send those letters and do reach out to your local block associations, community groups, civic associations, and get them to come out against this as well. Thank you so much. Do not forget to vote. You can do it via early voting, or you can do it on election day. And please ask all your friends neighbors, family to do the same and vote against this. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation tonight.